There are names in Scripture that thunder like Sinai, and there are names that move like wind through tent flaps, present, influential, yet never crowned by covenant. This story does not begin with him. It begins with a well in a distant land, with a servant kneeling in prayer beside weary camels, with bracelets of gold catching the desert sun, with a young woman drawing water, unaware that history is bending toward her, before sisters would measure love in silence, before a shepherd would count years beneath another man's command, before wages would change like shifting sand. There stood a watcher. He watched the camels. He watched the ornaments. He listened to the testimony of Abraham's servant. And something stirred within him, not worship, not surrender, but calculation. He understood value. He understood opportunity. He understood how to stand near blessing without belonging to it. He would negotiate what heaven had already spoken. He would delay what God had already ordained. He would prosper from a covenant he never carried. Yet the Lord, sovereign and unthreatened, would still move through his tents, for destiny sometimes passes through reluctant hands. Years later, beneath the hills of Gilead, he would chase a fleeing son-in-law into the night, only to be halted by a voice, not his own. A warning, not an invitation. So we must ask, what becomes of a man who hosts promise, but never bows to the promiser? What becomes of a man who learns the language of blessing, yet never yields his heart? The scroll now opens in Haran. Do you know the man yet? Was he just a mere deceiver or a mirror? Comment down below what you think. This is the story of Laban. Long before Jacob arrived breathless and alone, Laban was already a man formed by watching. He watched his father, Bethuel, manage land and livestock. He watched caravans pass through Aram, carrying spices and stories. He watched the politics of marriage alliances. And when Abraham's servant arrived with 10 camels kneeling at the well, Laban watched again. The servant spoke of Abraham. He spoke of covenant. He spoke of a son named Isaac. He spoke of divine direction at the well.
Abraham sent me to find a wife for Isaac at this well, as the Lord directed.
I see.
But Laban's eyes had already measured the gold rings. Hospitality came quickly. He said,
Come in, O blessed of the Lord. Thank you, my Lord.
Blessed. The words rolled easily off his tongue. He could speak the language of faith. He could echo reverence. He could nod at providence. But even then, Laban understood something critical. Marriage was negotiation. Daughters were leverage. Blessing could be structured. Rebekah left that house adorned. And Laban learned a lesson that day. Covenant travels with wealth. Years passed, and Laban prospered in Aram. He built flocks. He established household authority. He raised daughters. Leah, tender-eyed, observant, the eldest. Rachel, radiant, desired. The younger, 2 daughters, 2 futures, 2 instruments of alliance. Laban understood the value of order. The eldest first. Custom before desire. Tradition before passion. He would not be hurried. He would not be outmaneuvered, or so he believed. One day a stranger approached the well. He was not wealthy. He carried no caravan. He arrived alone. But he carried something else, the scent of promise. His name was Jacob, son of Isaac, grandson of Abraham, bearer of a birthright taken through cunning. Jacob wept when he met Rachel. Laban watched. He had seen that look before. Desire, attachment, vulnerability. And when Laban heard Jacob recount his lineage, something stirred. This was not just a nephew. This was a bridge to inheritance. Laban embraced him warmly, stayed close, offered him place. But Laban was not a man who gave without calculating. After a month, he asked,
Because you are my kinsman, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?
It sounded generous. It was strategic. Jacob answered quickly,
I will serve you 7 years for Rachel.
7 years. Laban's mind moved like water over stone. 7 years of free labor. 7 years of loyalty secured by affection. 7 years of growth for his household. He smiled.
It is better that I give her to you than to another man.
Better. Notice what he did not say. He did not promise immediacy. He did not speak clearly of timing. He left space. And Laban understood something about love. Love makes men patient. 7 years passed, like a few days to Jacob. But not to Laban. To Laban they were profit, expansion, increase. And when the wedding feast arrived, he made his move. The feast was loud, wine flowed, music rose like smoke into the desert sky, torches flickered against the woven walls of tents. Servants moved in rhythm, guests laughed, the air felt thick with celebration. And Laban watched it all. He had done this before. He knew the customs. In Aram, the bride was veiled. In Aram, the night concealed what the day revealed. In Aram, the father controlled the exchange. Jacob was smiling, radiant, certain. 14 eyes had watched him for 7 years. Servants, shepherds, daughters. They all knew he loved Rachel, and Laban knew it too. But Laban also knew something Jacob did not fully grasp. Custom is a shield, and tradition can justify almost anything. When night fell, Laban made the decision. He summoned Leah, Leah the elder, Leah whose eyes had learned to look inward, because outward they were rarely chosen. Leah who had watched her sister receive what she herself had not. What did Laban say to her? Scripture is silent, but silence can be loud. Did he tell her it was necessary? Did he tell her it was her right? Did he tell her this was how it must be? Or did he simply give instruction? And Leah obeyed. Under the veil in darkness, beneath celebration's echo, a covenant was formed, but not with the woman Jacob thought. Morning came like judgment. The sun does not conspire with deception, it exposes. Jacob awoke, and there she was, Leah, not Rachel. The cry that rose from him must have shaken the camp.
What is this you have done to me?
But Laban did not flinch. Calm, steady, cultural.
It is not so done in our country, to give the younger before the firstborn.
Not so done. The words were heavy with justification. The man who once deceived his own father now tasted deception himself. And Laban stood upon custom like a wall. Finish her bridal week. Then you may also have Rachel for another 7 years. And Jacob agreed again, because love binds more tightly than fairness. And Laban secured 14 years. 14 years of labor, 14 years of increase, 14 years of control. But something else began that night. A rivalry that would fracture a household. Leah bore the first son. She named him Reuben. See? A son. Perhaps she hoped Jacob would finally see her. He did not. She bore Simeon, then Levi, then Judah. Each name was a cry, each birth a plea. Rachel watched, barren, desired but fruitless, loved but empty. And Laban watched them both. Did he feel guilt? Did he sense the storm he had planted? Or did he see only lineage expanding beneath his roof? Rachel turned to Jacob in anguish.
Give me children, or I die!
Rachel, what would you have me
Jacob
do?
burned with frustration.
Am I in the place of God?
And so, Rachel did what women in desperation sometimes did in those ancient days. She gave her maid Bilhah. Leah responded with Zilpah. Sons were born through proxies: Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Issachar, Zebulun, Dinah. 12 tribes forming inside a house built on rivalry. And Laban's wealth increased. Shepherding hands multiplied. Flocks expanded. But peace? Peace did not grow. Jacob's affection remained with Rachel. Leah learned to find solace in motherhood. Rachel learned to wait. And Laban remained at the center. A father who had orchestrated advantage but could not orchestrate harmony. Then finally, Rachel conceived Joseph, the child of long prayer. And something shifted. Because when Joseph was born, Jacob's patience expired.
Send me away. Let me return to my own country.
He told Laban, "Let me return to my own country." And Laban felt something he had not anticipated. Loss of control. Laban had observed something undeniable. Since Jacob arrived, his flocks had multiplied, his fields had prospered. Favor clung to his household like morning dew, and Laban was perceptive enough to know why. "I have learned by experience," he admitted.
I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake.
He could acknowledge the blessing, but he still sought to manage it.
Name your wages.
Jacob proposed a strange agreement. He would take only the speckled and spotted among the flock, the weaker, the less desirable. It sounded foolish. Laban agreed quickly. But before Jacob could begin, Laban removed all such animals and placed them 3 days' journey away under his son's care. A preemptive strike. Control the variables. Secure the advantage. But Jacob did something unexpected. Through breeding strategies and careful selection, the flocks multiplied in his favor. The stronger animals bore speckled offspring. Year after year, Jacob prospered, and Laban changed his wages. If you take the speckled, then only the streaked. If the streaked, then only the spotted. 10 times, terms rewritten, promises adjusted, agreements reshaped. But each time, the outcome reversed. Because this was no longer a contest of cunning. It was a quiet intervention of God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God who had spoken at Bethel to Jacob. And Laban began to feel the shift. His sons whispered, "Jacob has taken all that was our father's." The atmosphere thickened, and Laban's face changed toward Jacob. Not openly hostile, but colder, measured. And then came the dream. One night, as tension brewed like a coming storm, Jacob heard a voice, "Return to the land of your fathers." The God of Bethel had spoken again, and Jacob told Rachel and Leah everything: the wage changes, the manipulation, the angel in the dream declaring, "I have seen all that Laban is doing to you." Rachel and Leah answered in unison,
Is there still any portion or inheritance for us in our father's house?
Even his daughters felt it. The control, the calculation, the distance.
What should I do?
Whatever God has said to you, do it. We are with you.
I will follow his path.
And so they left, quietly, secretly, while Laban was shearing sheep.
Children are ready.
But Rachel took something.
Packs are secure.
Her father's household idols, teraphim, small gods carved of wood or stone, symbols of inheritance, tokens of authority. Did she take them for protection, for leverage, or as silent rebellion? We are not told. But when Laban returned and discovered their absence, his patience ended. He gathered his kinsmen, and he pursued. 7 days into the hill country of Gilead, and on the night before confrontation, The God Laban had acknowledged, the God he had referenced but never surrendered to, spoke to him in a dream.
Be careful that you speak to Jacob neither good nor bad.
A warning, not a suggestion. Laban, for all his calculation, was about to meet a boundary he could not negotiate. 7 days, 7 days of dust rising behind angry men. 7 days of rehearsed speeches forming in Laban's mind. He had been wronged. That was the story he told himself. His daughters taken without farewell. His grandchildren removed without embrace. His wealth diminished. His gods stolen. And yet beneath the surface of indignation was something else. Fear, because the dream had been clear. The God who had once blessed his house because of Jacob had now placed a boundary before him. Speak to Jacob, neither good nor bad. In other words, you will not control this ending. When Laban finally overtook Jacob in the hill country of Gilead, the mountains stood like silent witnesses. The tents were pitched. The wind moved softly through the high grass. And two men stood facing one another. Two deceivers, two strategists, two men shaped by advantage. Laban spoke first.
What have you done, that you have stolen away unknown to me and carried away my daughters like captives taken with the sword?
The accusation was heavy. He painted himself as wounded father, as wronged patriarch.
Why did you flee secretly and steal away from me and not tell me? For I might have sent you away with joy and songs with tambourine and harp.
Would he have? Or would there have been conditions, rules, last-minute revisions?
And you did not allow me to kiss my sons and my daughters. Now you have done foolishly in so doing.
He continued.
It is in my power to do you harm.
And there it was, truth breaking through performance. Power. Laban had always relied on power. Cultural power, economic power, paternal power, negotiating power. But then he said something that revealed the boundary he could not cross. But the God of your father spoke to me last night. Not my God, your father's God. Even now Laban kept distance. The God of Abraham, the fear of Isaac, but never fully my Lord. Then came the charge that burned hottest. Why have you stolen my gods? My gods. Little carved idols that could be hidden beneath the saddle. Small enough to conceal, powerless enough to be stolen. Jacob did not know Rachel had taken them. And in confidence he declared,
With whomever you find your gods, do not let him live.
a dangerous vow spoken in ignorance. So the search began. Laban entered Leah's tent. Nothing. He entered the tents of the maids. Nothing. He entered Rachel's tent. Rachel, the daughter he once used as leverage, the daughter whose beauty had secured 14 years of labor, the daughter whose marriage had anchored Jacob to Haran. She had hidden the idols in the camel's saddle and sat upon them. When her father entered, she did not rise. Let it not displease my lord that I cannot rise before you, for the manner of women is with me. In that culture, the statement stopped further probing, and Laban did not find his gods. Pause here. The man who controlled contracts, the man who altered wages 10 times, the man who orchestrated a wedding night deception, now stood unable to recover figurines from beneath his own daughter. The irony was thick. His gods could not defend themselves. They could not expose the thief. They could not speak. They could not act. They were silent. And something in that moment revealed the smallness of what Laban had trusted. Jacob, now vindicated, turned fierce. 20 years of restrained frustration erupted. What is my trespass? What is my sin that you have so hotly pursued me? He recounted everything: the heat of day, the frost of night, the lost sleep, the 14 years for daughters, the 6 years for flocks. The God of my father, The God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me. Surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God has seen my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night." There it was again. Rebuked. Laban had been corrected, not by Jacob, but by a higher authority. And for the first time in this confrontation, Laban had no leverage. Laban answered, but his tone had shifted. "These daughters are my daughters. These children are my children. These flocks are my flocks." He claimed ownership, yet he could not enforce it. "So now come, let us make a covenant." When control fails, negotiation returns. A heap of stones was gathered, a pillar raised, witnesses in rock and earth. Laban named it Jegar Sahadutha. Jacob called it Gilead. Different languages, different identities, same boundary. Then Laban said something revealing. The Lord watch between you and me when we are absent one from another. Often quoted as blessing. But listen carefully. It was not sentimental. It was surveillance. God watch you, because I cannot. If you mistreat my daughters, if you take other wives, if you cross this boundary, God will see. It was not trust. It was resignation. A line drawn in stone and soil. They shared a meal. They spent the night. And at dawn, Laban rose. He kissed his sons and daughters. He blessed them, and he returned to his place. And just like that, his name begins to fade from the narrative. No dramatic death recorded, no legacy celebrated, no covenant extended. He disappears. A man who hosted promise but never became part of it. So what do we learn from the man of Haran, from Laban, who touched destiny but never bowed to it? 1. You can recognize blessing and still try to manipulate it. Laban admitted, "The Lord has blessed me because of you." He saw the evidence, but instead of surrendering, he strategized. There are people who know God is moving, yet their first instinct is not worship, but control. 2. Tradition can become a mask for self-interest. It is not done so in our country. Custom was real, but timing was chosen, and justification can sound righteous while hiding ambition. 3. Delayed integrity multiplies conflict. One night of deception produced years of rivalry. One manipulated agreement produced generational tension. What we justify in private echoes in our households. 4. You cannot outmaneuver the purposes of God. Wages changed 10 times, terms rewritten, flocks rearranged. But when God determines increase, no contract can cancel it. 5. Proximity to covenant is not the same as participation in covenant. Laban heard the stories of Abraham. He met the servant of Isaac. He lived 20 years beside Jacob. Yet the text never shows surrender. He knew of God, but he kept his idols. He referenced the Lord, but he did not remove the teraphim. And here is the most sobering reflection. You can host promise. You can speak blessing. You can negotiate with destiny. You can even be used in God's larger plan, and still miss intimacy. So we return to the question from the beginning, is Laban merely a deceiver, or is he a mirror? When blessing enters your house, do you worship, or do you calculate? When God increases someone near you, do you rejoice, or do you adjust the terms? When the Lord draws a boundary in your life, do you bow, or do you pursue? The stones of Mizpah still whisper, the tents of Haran still echo, and the story of Laban remains a warning, a mirror, a call. If this story stirred something in you, if you have ever struggled with control, with manipulation, with holding too tightly to what was never fully yours, then pause, reflect, surrender, because the God who spoke in the night to Laban still speaks. And he is not looking for negotiators. He is looking for surrender. If this message blessed you, share it. Let it travel. Let it awaken. And subscribe to Whisper of Scrolls, where ancient stories still breathe and Scripture still searches the heart. Until the next scroll is opened,